Good afternoon, dear teachers. We want to thank you so much for joining this session. Our focus in today's session is going to be how can we guide our learners on making their own notes. That's going to be our topic of discussion during today's session. And our program will run as follows. We shall have an opening prayer, a simple introduction. Then we shall have a word from the Ministry of Education. Then we shall have our facilitator take us on. And then those who may have some questions, we shall have time to ask the questions, and then we shall conclude. I want to ask whether there is any volunteer who wants to lead us in a word of prayer, to raise up your hand, and then you take us through. Any volunteer? Okay, we can humble ourselves and we pray. Loving Father, we want to thank you for the gift of life. We want to thank you for having enabled us to connect and be online. We want to ask you that whatever we shall be discussing this session, whatever we shall be learning, you may enable us to implement it in our schools. We make this through Christ our Lord. Amen. So, for those teachers that have just joined, kindly check in the chat and take some few minutes to register yourself for the session. So the link in the chat is the registration link. So kindly fill it in such that we can be able to capture your details. The Ministry of Education through the National Cultural Development Center rolled out the new competence-based curriculum, or what we call a competence-based curriculum, in 2020. And schools have been doing their best to guide learners on how to make notes. But we felt it that teachers may need more guidance on how children can be guided on making notes. So when we thought about it, we decided let us call on a session to support each other. In learning, we do expect that as schools, we do collaborate. If there is some good practice in one or two schools, we can come together online and share those good practices. And that is one of the reasons as to why we are online, to share the good practices that we are having in our different schools, but also to keep learning. In the competence-based curriculum requires continuous learning. I know some of us are used to different approaches of delivering content to learners, but the new curriculum really promotes a lot of research and requires us to make research, but also to be able to support these children on making their own notes. So with that, allow me now to invite the principal at the Ministry of Education, Mr. Ronald, to say something and to officially open up the session. Mr. Ronald, you're most welcome.
Thank you, Mr. Kaziba. Can you hear me?
Yes, you are very clear.
Okay. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. I'm happy to be joining in this afternoon, and I want to thank everyone who has made time to join in this session. I want to thank Mr. Kaziba and your team for organizing this session, and to thank Mr. Kugonza Arthur, who is our main facilitator this afternoon. We are all joining in to learn and to share. Mr. Kugonza is only going to lead, but we want all of us to participate and support each other and learn together. This is what we yearn for. We yearn for collaboration and networking. And I think the best way forward within this new curriculum is for all of us to always remember to come and share with each other what we have learned, what we are doing well, so that we can together do the same and prepare the learners in the same way. If we do not do this, then we are going to have a learning gap. So we are here to close the gap, the learning gap, And I'm sure that all of us are going to learn something this afternoon so that we can go back and let our colleagues also learn from us. And gradually we all begin to do the same thing. I know that there are quite a number of other activities that will be organized. Please, when you are invited, let us join hands so that we can learn together. I want to welcome everybody and declare this session open. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mr. Ronald. Allow me now to welcome Teacher Arthur to start off with the discussion. Teacher Arthur, you're most welcome.
Thank you so much, Mr. Kaziba. Good afternoon to you all. I want to take this opportunity to thank HELP and also thank the Forum for Innovative Teachers and also the Association of Biology Educators for providing platforms and the expertise and also the resources to enable such discussions happen. I'm very grateful to you, Mr. Dungu, for the support that you have provided and also the link that you are creating between the practicing teachers and also the Ministry of Education offices. Let me share the screen and then start with the, I'm going to be very brief, but at the same time, I'm also going to be a bit practical because we want to see if we can have a practical approach that can enable us, guide learners, make effective notes. I'm teacher Arthur Gonza, and I teach at St. Mary's College, Chisubi. Today's session on guiding learners to take effective notes is not just important, it is urgent and timely. When you move across schools and interact with learners, and also you check in their class workbooks, you observe something which is very troubling. You still find that teachers are still dictating notes. You'll see that evidence in the students' books. Then also others are still distributing handouts for learners to copy or even for learners to print and have as their own personal notes. Then other teachers still rely solely on lecture methods without engaging students in active learning. The government provided textbooks backed with a lot of competency-based activities, and these books still sit underused in the school libraries. And also in some schools, when you interact with the teachers, or even the administrators themselves, you realize that administrators nowadays, they prioritize the quantity of notes over quality of understanding. They check and demand that books must be having notes of even this content or of these pages. This outdated approach undermines the very essence of this competency-based curriculum, where learners must always demonstrate understanding, demonstrate skills like critical thinking and application, and not just memorization. So how can we indeed expect our students to excel in these kind of exams that are given to them, which are scenario-based, if we deny them the chance to process, summarize, and internalize knowledge through structured note-taking techniques? The reality is very clear. If we continue like this, then we are preparing our learners for knowledge-based exams and not for life. And remember, the old curriculum was the one which was knowledge-based, and the teachers are still stuck there. So today, we must confront these practices and commit to transforming and not taking into a powerful tool for active competency-driven learning. So by the end of today's session, I believe that teachers will have understood the importance of structured note-taking, note-making and learning, and they'll also learn how to guide learners in making notes from these government-provided learners' books. Then also teachers will are expected to shift from handout dependency to discussion-based learning. And also teachers will apply assessment techniques to reinforce note-making skills. But before we go into the main things for this session, there is something which is important, which you must take note of. Why does the note-making matter? It is very important, one, that this note-making, it always helps learners to process, summarize, and retain information. It teaches learners how to identify important information or a skill useful beyond the classroom. It can even foster independent learning and self-discipline. You are always in meetings, even I'm sure, even as we're seated now, some teachers must be having their notebooks there. Whatever information you feel that I mentioned that is very important, you're going to summarize it down. At the end of the day, each one of you will be having their own notes, but being guided by the discussion that I'm sharing with you today. Then secondly, note-taking encourages critical thinking over passive copying. Instead of passively listening, learners always engage with the material by summarizing it in their own words, which promotes critical thinking, deeper engagement with the subject that you'd be delivering. Then also, note-making prepares learners for self-directed study, and especially for the exams. If a learner has well-organized notes, a learner can easily review the key points or the key topics without going through entire textbooks. Then also, it improves organization of thoughts, that while encouraging learners to structure information logically, and in this way, you'll be aiding comprehension, thereby helping learners distinguish between main ideas from supporting details. Then also this note-making, it also helps absenteeism recovery. If a learner misses a class, of course, good notes from a peer or good notes from a friend can help them catch up. So these are the reasons why it is important that these learners take notes in class. So what are these challenges with the traditional note making? And when I talk of the traditional, I don't want to use the word the old curriculum way. You know, teachers have been used the old system, and we tend to think that things have not changed. Things have actually changed. The demands have changed, the curriculum itself changed, and the syllabus itself also changed. So if we continue being stuck in the past, what are these challenges that come up? When we just give notes the traditional way, this promotes passive learning. Learners just copy things without understanding them, which is very dangerous. And we shall also discover that this session here will also help us to give us highlights or key things on how we can help our learners and be able to participate or to be able to compete in the exams. Then also, the traditional way of giving notes creates over-reliance on teacher handouts. It limits engagements. Then it also promotes poor retention. There is always no active processing of information. You've given them something, they just take it. They don't process it. After all, you have, it is coming from a teacher. Then also the traditional note-taking system, sorry. Okay. Then now, what do we need to do? We need to engage learners in guided discussions and follow this up with structured note-making systems. Now, what is the role of you as a teacher? Of course, ideally speaking, you're not a teacher, you're just a facilitator. And since you're a facilitator, your role shouldn't just be on giving a handout. You're not a handout provider, you are a facilitator. Then also your role as a teacher, you have to be able to guide learners to extract key points from the textbooks. And the key word here is guiding them. Learners need to be told what to write and when to write it, and also how to write it. We should desist the system of kind of spying on the learners. You go in a class, you present the lecture method, then at the end of the session, you say lesson has ended. Then learners ask, teacher, what are we writing? And then you say, haven't you been writing? You've not told them to write. You've not told them what to write. So you're saying, haven't you been writing? So we should also desist from that if we are to be called or referred to as facilitators. Then also your role as a teacher is to encourage discussions, that is peer learning, and also use scenario-based questions to deepen understanding of the things that you're learning, you're teaching. Now, how do we guide learners to make notes from these government-provided learners' books that are lying idle in some libraries? These are now the practical things that I'm going to share with you. Some of them I have practiced them, and at least I have seen them work. Whichever subject you're teaching, the first step is you pick a book that is going to guide you. You pick a book that you'll follow. For example, if maybe you check, maybe if, you have, I'll just mention some few books, maybe if there is St. Bernard, or maybe if there is Baroque, or maybe there is Elite. Then you check, of these three books, if I'm going to teach the topic of, say, sexual reproduction in humans, which of these books is good? Which one has activities that fits your interest as a teacher or as a facilitator, and also that fits within the resources that the school is able to provide? If you pick a book, then let this book be known to the learners. You can now tell them that maybe in this topic of sexual reproduction in humans, I'm going to be following maybe St. Bernard. I'm just mentioning the book randomly. Then now, let you use this book to guide learners on the flow and the structure of the content as per the learning outcomes in the syllabus. And what are the best practical ways we can do this? I'm going to open some of the learners' books, then we see how can we extract out the information, and how can learners write it down in their books. And then, so I'm going to, let me open, I'll start with my very own area. That is the area of biology, okay. I'm just going to open an extract here. Okay, so I'm assuming I'm going to teach about this is an extract from one of the learners' books. I'm assuming I'm going to teach about reproduction in humans. So how am I going to guide my learners to write such notes and also respond to the activity. Mr. Kaziba, I think you can help me with some controls.
So Arthur, you can disable like when you check up there on the tools, there are some 3 dots.
I have disabled, okay. Okay, I've got it.
Okay.
We now first
maybe
clear
you can
this one
first
off.
delete this, what they have done.
Okay. Okay, thank you. Okay, so I'm assuming this is the area that I'm going to teach about. Now, depending on which subject, they have different systems or mechanism of giving the activities. When you check in most of the science subjects, this is the format. There is an activity, there is a key question, there are things what you need, perhaps maybe the materials that you're going to need for that lesson. Then there are also what to do. Now, I'm going to transform this one here into notes, assuming I'm a student. Now, of course, the first thing that I will do, I had wanted to see if I can share 2 screens, but I may not do it. Okay. See. Okay, now I hope the 2 screens are coming through. So first of all, this is how I guide my learners. The topic is sexual reproduction in humans. So if I demand my learners to write the topic, I'm saying I'm just going to be sexual, so that I'm going to be practical to see how we can, okay. So this is sexual reproduction in humans. And of course, when I finish this, I'll also go into another subject. So now, this is the heading. And when you read through this, on this page here, I would always guide my learners to read through the introduction. And if there is anything worth noting down in this introduction, I would demand them to write it down, having rephrased it, just writing what is important. So in this way, I'm trying to train learners on how they can read a text and rephrase it without distorting the meaning of that text. So when I look at this text here, I would ask them that you read through the introduction and then see if there is anything that is worth writing down. Or if there is something that is worth writing down, then I'll tell them now, you note down that one. For instance, if I read through that in the previous chapter, of course, I don't expect them to write in the previous chapter, discuss how sexual reproduction takes place in flowering plants. I don't expect them to write this. Then you'll understand that sexual reproduction involves humans. So it involves the 2 parents, the father and the mother, each with specialized reproductive organs that make up the reproductive system. So by reading this statement here, there is something that a learner ought to write down that perhaps is key information and not just supporting material, like sexual reproduction. So I would demand learners to write this in their books. So I'm assuming if they have written So this is now, I'm just going to, okay, maybe they say that sorry, my screen has moved a bit. Okay. So I'm just going to scribble something that in humans, sometimes technology can tend to be stubborn, but okay. So I'm saying that in humans, so blah, blah, so they have written that introduction. And after writing that introduction, now we go to the activity here. And what is the subheading? The subheading is mammalian reproductive system. So I will demand them to copy that heading as it is, because this is the book that I have picked, perhaps for this particular topic, that is good, that fits my interest, and also the resources that the school can provide. The heading is the mammalian reproductive system. So I will demand them to write that heading as it is there, the mammalian reproductive system. So they have written the heading. Then what is the next thing? I will now take them to the activity. Now in the activity, I have learned to ignore things like the key question and what to do, because they may not look, they are not so organized. So after the activity, the heading, then I will demand them now to write the activity name, not the number, and what is the activity name, this particular activity. The activity name is drawing and labeling the male and female reproductive systems. So this is the activity that they have from the book, from the learner's book. Then now the next thing is I will not guide them again to go and write the key question, the what you need, but now we go straight to the activities themselves. Now, in science books, these activities are presented as the what to do. But in others, like humanities, as we shall see later, and also languages, for them, they're just basically activities. Now, I will phrase these ones as tasks. In this way, I'm now training my learners, or I'm introducing my learners to words that are used in end of cycle exams, tasks. What is a task? So the training now starts in the class. And what is my first task? I will demand them to write these what to do as they are. The first one is use the chart displayed in your class to study the diagrams of male and female reproductive systems. Now, if I don't have the charts, also as I say, I have to be very creative. If I don't have the charts, maybe I know that they can still get this information from textbooks. So I'll maybe say that now use the textbooks provided, study the diagrams of male and female reproductive system. Now, this will be my first task. So I'm saying that using the textbooks provided, study the male and the female reproductive parts. Now, this is my first task. Then, what is task 2 saying? Of course, this one is broken down into Roman number 1 and the Roman number 1. So, they must write that. So, Roman number 1, we are saying that draw and label. In your notebooks, this is how it is appearing in the learner's book. Draw and label in your books. Then, of course, there is a table there. So they are going to draw the male and they're also going to draw the female. Now, all this, it is a learner writing in their exercise books. They have now started the process of making their own notes. These are the notes that they are making. Then task 2, so task 2, they're saying using internet-enabled computer or textbooks. Now, this is where also some teachers find problems. They say, but now the activity is saying using the internet. Should I first send my learners out of the class to go in the computer lab and search on the internet? No, they are saying using the internet or textbooks. Now for you, what have you provided these learners? If you have taught them from a computer lab, then definitely we say use the internet. If you have taught them from your class, perhaps you must have come or must have told them to borrow textbooks from the library from where they are going to make this research from. So I'm going to duplicate this the way it is. So they have done that. Then number 2, so I'm saying that using the textbooks, research about each part labeled. Now, all of these, they are just copying from the learner's book. Then task number 3, they are saying why are tests in mammals found like that. Then now, after they have all this, they have just been copying from the learner's books. Then the next thing, I'll now tell them to write responses. Now, they have now finished copying down things as they are in the learner's book. They have written the heading. We're going to learn about sexual reproduction in humans. They have written the introduction. Then they have written now the heading of the day, the mammalian reproductive system. Then they have now written the name of the activity, drawing and labeling the male and the female reproductive systems. Then they have now written the tasks. These tasks are the activities that they are going to do. And they have written them as they are in the learner's books, of course, with slight modifications. You don't expect them to write using the internet if they're not going to use the internet in class. So they have copied this as it is. Now, what is the next thing? Now, this is when you now come in as a teacher. Before you go to teach this lesson, you ought to have known that learners need to access information on the structures of the male and the female reproductive system. You also needed to have known that learners will also need to access textbooks with the information about the importance of the parts of the male and the female reproductive systems. So as they were borrowing learners' books from the library, you must also have identified an appropriate textbook where they are going to get these things from. It is not you coming with the handout of notes, having these structures here, having the functions, and you just start dictating for them or drawing for them on the blackboard. Let them do the research from the textbooks. that they have borrowed all the textbooks that you have provided in the classroom setting. And this research, they can do it from any textbook, even if it is a pamphlet, as long as it is having the information that you need them to research about. Still, even if it is these normal or traditional biology textbooks, like maybe tropical biology, introduction to biology, as long as you have checked and that the book has the things you want learners to discover or you want learners to research about. So in the responses here, now learners will know that in the responses, they are responding to these tasks here. The first task is saying research about this. Then Roman number 1 of the task is saying draw and label the male and the female reproductive system. Now, you guide learners, and now here the responses. The first task was about drawing the male and the female reproductive system. So, expect a learner to draw the male reproductive system. But now, where is this learner going to draw it from? You must have provided the textbooks. You are not the one to draw for them on the notes board. You're not the one to give them handouts to go and copy. Let them open the textbooks, then observe them as they draw in class. You observe them as they draw in class. This is the opportunity that you'll now get to check those ones who are not doing what you want. This is the opportunity that where you'll have to now help those ones that have drawing challenges. You now guide them on the nitty-gritties of how to make a biological drawing, etc. So we expect that after learners have drawn, let me say maybe now they will open the textbooks that you have given them. So they have opened the textbook and they have found out, they have seen the male reproductive system and they have drawn it. In your lesson, after they have drawn, then what else do they have to do? Draw the female one. So I think if this was Roman number 1, if this is Roman number 1, then Roman number 2 will now come in. The female. Sorry. Okay, so here they are coming in. The female reproductive system. So they also draw it. They're also going to draw it. Then what is task number 2 asking them to do? They are saying using the textbooks, research about each part labeled. Now, let them open those textbooks. Let them read and look for the functions of the parts that they have labeled. It shouldn't be you to provide them. So this is task 2. And what is it saying? It is asking them to write about functions of the parts labeled. And then, of course, they'll research about things like, maybe let me assume the testes. So what do? Let them read from the textbooks. Look for the function of the testes, transfer it and write it in their own notes. You guide them like that. Then where they get stuck or where maybe there is something where the book is silent, a learner can ask, but now teacher, maybe we are seeing on the female reproductive part, there is a prostate gland. But we have searched in these textbooks, none of them is giving us the role of the prostate gland. Now you can also come in as a teacher, you now give them the role of the prostate gland and they also rate it. So you're guiding learners to make their own notes following activities that following activities that they have picked from these books here, transferring them into their notes, and also opening textbooks actively in class. Here, even you'll be able now to guide them in how research can be made. So they are opening the books, they are making the research, and they're also looking for information. Then after that, what is task number 3 saying? Why are the testis in mammals found? So they should now also respond to that. Task number 3, about why the testes might be found outside the abdominal cavity. Now, after they have written everything, they have made their own research, you have been following them or you have been checking them in class, they have written. Now, when do you come in now as a teacher? Now, it is not practical to say that you're going to call everyone in class to come and present their findings. If when I look at a lesson like this one, there is nothing learners are going to present on task number 1 and also task number 2. After all, I have been guiding them to make research from the books that I have given them. Therefore, I'm sure that they have written what is correct. But however, there are some things that may provoke debate or a discussion. Like when you look at task number 3, why are testes in mammals found outside the abdominal cavity? Now, there, as learners are now maybe debating on this, now at the end of the session, you now have now to guide them. You take them through everything. You ask them probing questions to see whether they have understood what they have written. And what do we mean by probing questions? The probing questions, you now try to connect in the real life situations. For instance, if I'm now asking them questions about maybe the prostate gland, and maybe ask them, now, people who have prostate glands, for instance, what problems do they face? Or how will it affect their functioning as men? Now, a learner should be able to go and read and say, oh, the prostate gland is responsible for secreting semen. Then our learner should be able to give me a response like, maybe now, teacher, I think this person will not be able to secrete semen because the prostate gland is affected. So you keep on asking them probing questions to see whether they have understood the things that they have been copying from the textbooks while they are making their own notes. Now, the probing questions here should be scenario-based because you want to see, are they competent? If a learner has said that maybe the role of the urethra is to provide a passage for urine, so they have copied that from the textbook, but you want to know, have these learners really understood what that one means? Then maybe you can ask them now, a person maybe who goes for short call, and as they pass out the urine, they experience a lot of pain. What could be the problem? Now, a learner should be able to go and read from what they have written and find out why would the person experience pain as they are trying to ease themselves. Now, a learner who has now comprehended or understood the things that have been written will be able to say that maybe I think it is the urethra which has a problem because it's the one which provides passage for urine. So those are what we call by the probing questions. You try to see if they can now relate what they have written to real life experiences. Okay, let me display back this now. And this now the activity that they have been doing here. Now, this one would now lay a foundation for my next lesson. In my next lesson, I may now not have to wait for them to come back. And then again, I give them another activity. Now I can tell them that since you know the book that I'm following in this particular topic, in the next lesson, we shall be talking about secondary sexual characteristics and also the human menstrual cycles. So you send them to the textbooks, to these learners' books, and you task them to make notes from there, then respond to the activity that is there. Then when you come back for your next session, you'll now start by gathering their responses and helping them understand the applicability of the research that they will have made. And when you look at all these learners' books, they have these white spaces here. They have text in white space, sorry. And they also have text which are not in white space. Only that now this one is a scan, but the activity is not in a white space. So it means that when they are writing, maybe if they write the heading, human menstrual cycle, all of these are notes for them to write down. Let them copy and write these ones. If they feel that there is need of rephrasing, they can rephrase, because you may find that this introduction here is giving them foundation of developing responses to the next activity that you'll be looking at. So you task them to copy this as their notes, this introduction here. Then from this one here, they now go to the activity, knowing, assuming that now they know the format of your activity, that in your activity, you require them to write the activity name, then rephrase the what to do into tasks. Copy the tasks as they are, then give their responses. Then after, they can present, and you also come in as a teacher to start seeing how you can help harmonize their responses. Any new things that emerge after they have written down their notes, then they can either maybe use the pencil, maybe they can still use the pen and fix it in between their notes. So that is how you can use such a book to guide learners on how to make their own notes. People say that maybe I'm biased towards the biology. Let me maybe take an example. Our friends in history, I know they must also be, they must also have logged in. Now, in history, how can learners rate the notes? The same system or the same format can apply. If I'm going to teach about world wars and their impact in East Africa, must I go with the handout? No, just walk into the classroom with these learners' books. And maybe if there is any other textbook that you think they will need some information when they are responding to some tasks, then you can also go equipped with those textbooks and you give them to the learners. So it means that now here, of course, they will first have to write the heading, world wars and their impact. Learning outcomes are always very critical. They can also rate them, but that is not my interest. So my interest is here. In a class, because we are assuming that all learners have these books, or maybe they have them in their groups. Now, you now task them to read through this. Remember, they have written the heading, World Wars and their impact in East Africa. They have now written the learning outcomes. Now, task them to read through all this information that they will need. And if there is anything worth writing, you can tell them to write it down. So as they read through, they are rephrasing and writing down in their notes books, copying from the learner's book or transferring from the learner's book into their class, into their exercise books. Then after they have written all this, then there is an activity here. Tell them, write the activity. The activity, World War I. We can still follow the same format, like the one I had given for biology. Okay. So they are writing the activity. Of course, we are talking about world wars. So this was the topic. Then they have written the learning outcomes in their books. Then there is some preamble. When you check in this book here, there is some preamble. So they have written some information from here. They have extracted some important information from this text here, and they have written it. So I'm assuming that now they have extracted some information from the learner's book, and they have written it from that area there. Then there is an activity here. So let them copy the activity. So the activity, so I'm going to write activity. Then what is the activity title? World War I. So activity is World War I. Then what are they going to do about it? These are now the tasks. And task one, what is task one saying? Using ICT or the library, research the meaning of World War I. So I'm assuming if you read through this text here, learners must have discovered the meaning of World War I. They must have discovered. So it means that now this one, they may need either textbooks or from this text here, they ought to have discovered the meaning of World War I. So you don't have to say, okay, you first go out to the class for that, maybe research about the meaning of World War I, or maybe in your groups, discuss about the meaning of World War I. If there is where they can pick that information directly, show them where the information is, let them pick it from there. After all, this task number one is not calling for different opinions. Then, so the task one, we are saying research about the meaning of World War I. So learners have written the task as it is. Then task two, what is task two saying? They are saying, in your own opinion, explain reasons that may lead to world war between the two or more countries. So learners write, explain what would lead. Then now, after they have written all the, of course, even present your findings, the rest of the class is also a task. Let them also write that one there. Then now, the next thing is responses now. Responses. Task one, they are going to look for the meaning of World War I, because that is what the activity is saying. Research the meaning of World War I. So learner will say maybe World War I is that and that, maybe the war that took place between this and these years. And where are they getting this information? The information is there in the preamble. That information must have been mentioned somewhere. Or maybe if it is not mentioned, then you must provide them with textbooks where such information is in class, in that they are able to go open those textbooks and extract out those things for them. It is not you to stand in front of them and start dictating that now write the heading World War I. Then you start dictating for them all the notes. Then after that, you close you end the lesson and say you have successfully taught the lesson. Then the two, you're saying explain. Now this is when now they have now to make, to debate in their groups. In their groups, the way they are seated, they can now respond to this task item. So the task number two. Then after, now, as they are discussing and developing responses, you, the teacher, you are now moving around the class. You are engaging group per group, depending on the responses that they have come about. Why have you said this and that? Why is it that? Why is it like that and that? Why is it not this? So you are engaging them in a conversation within the class. You're interacting with them as they are debating and discussing about these things here. Now, when you're sure everyone has finished, now you can either call a representative group, or if you have a lot of time, you can now call 2 or 3 groups to come and present their findings to the rest of the class. But as they present their findings, now this is when you, as the teacher or as a facilitator, you now come in, you now start helping them understand or get rich explanations on each and every point that they are raising. For instance, if group 1 has come out and given me about 5 reasons why, as to why 2 countries or more may be involved in a world war. So I will note them down. Then after that, I will now start seeking further explanations from other members about those particular points. And also if there are others that are left out by other groups, now this is the time that will now enable them enrich what they have written with the point that perhaps maybe they had not come up with. So that is how you guide learners to make their own notes. And as you have seen, there is no need of you going with a handout in class. That handout, when are you going to use it? When are you going to use it? Maybe if you want to give it to the learners just as research material, you know that maybe the things you're going to teach, they are not anywhere in the textbook, they're not anywhere. And for you have maybe used the internet, you have downloaded some important information, then you can give the learners such information
Teacher? Okay. Okay. Teacher Arthur is getting back. Okay. Yes, as Teacher Arthur gets back, I know some of you may have some questions. You can be placing your questions in the chat as he gets back. On the call, we have an expert from the National Cultural Development Center. He will be looking your questions, and later on, you'll be able to give us feedback in case there is any question that you may need more clarification on. So let's give him some few minutes and then we see whether he's getting back, but I know he's getting back. Okay. Okay, 1, 2, okay. Teacher Arthur, are you back?
Yes, I'm back. Sorry, network challenges.
Okay.
Okay, let me share my screen. Okay. Okay. Now let me look at maybe, so it means that in our learners' books, all these white spaces here, these are the notes that learners should be writing. And you realize that even after here, then you find that for their activity that is given, they will need to refer to these notes that are given prior to that activity. So in the classroom, if learners have borrowed these books, you have told them to write this heading now. Let them copy these notes here as they are in the learners' books. Of course, they should be able to maybe rephrase some of the words. They shouldn't just be copying for the sake of copying. They can read through and rephrase. Then after they have finished, then they write down the activity. Then you guide them through responses of the activity that is there. So ideally, we don't need to give learners handouts. We don't need to stand in front of the classroom and start dictating notes for the learners. Let me go to an example of English. So English is also another interesting subject. Now English, this is something I've also scanned from an English learner's book. So if I'm going to teach about understanding a recorded television discussion, so what must learners write in their exercise books? So I will demand them to write this heading as it is, understanding a recorded television discussion. Then I'll task them now to read through this introduction here. When they read through this introduction, then I'll task them to write anything from this text that they feel is important to them. So if they read through and they feel that there is some information here that is worth noting down, then they can write it down. But my aim is the activity. It is not about this introduction here. So if they write or they don't write this introduction, it's okay. Then after maybe writing whatever they have written here, now I'll come to the activity. Now I'll still task them to write the activity and its heading. Then now these ones, I'll phrase them as tasks. Task number 1, identify the topic under the discussion in the presentation. Of course, here, you're saying that in this activity, they're saying that you will watch a recorded television discussion presented to you by your teacher in your groups. Now, this is when ICT now comes in. When you're teaching a lesson like this one, it means that now be having your projector, you have your pre-recorded television discussion, you have your laptop, learners are seated in class, they have written this heading in their exercise books, they have written this introduction, then they have copied all these tasks. Now, after writing all these tasks in the exercise books, then now you're going to display or to play for them a recorded television. Now, after they have listened to it, then now they rate responses. Now they rate responses to these tasks from number 1 up to number 4. Then now after that, of course, as they write down their responses, you're moving around, you're engaging them, you're interacting with them, you're picking their thoughts. You're picking your thoughts on their thoughts on the topic under discussion. You're guiding it individually. Then after you're sure everyone has now finished responding to your activity, then now you can now invite, depending on the time that you're left with, you can now invite 1 or 2 groups to come and present their findings. Then after they have presented their findings, then now this one, now the teacher, you now come in and now start maybe re-emphasizing some things, or maybe correcting them here and there. You guide them through their responses. Your discussion with them is based on the responses that they have given. And even if the response that they have given is wrong, you accommodate it. Then in the point of discussion, you now explain to them why if this particular point is wrong, and you all agree, or they agree that that point is wrong, let us remove it, or maybe let us modify it like this and that. So that is how you guide the learners through notes taking. I now want to first see, okay. So now we have now been going through the practicability of guiding learners, taking down their notes. So we have said, let them copy the heading, let them write the notes as they are in the white spaces in the books, let them write the activity name, let them now write the tasks, the word task, and copy those activities as the task, and then also let them give the illustrations. Now, we should move beyond handouts. Your lessons should be discussion-based. And when we say that something should be discussion-based, it means there is something that must be provoking the debate. And it is these activities, or it is the tasks that always keep on provoking the debate. There is no debate that can be generated from the handouts. There is nothing there. So always ask probing questions. Let learners debate the responses from the activities, and then use the group summaries. And when I say use the group summaries, that now your discussion is based on what the groups have given you, point per point. Then after that, you also have to do assessment for this note taking. And that one can be done through spot checks, randomly reviewing notes for understanding. You see, learners have written down things. Are they able to understand them? Are they able to explain them? Then peer reviewing, swapping notes, and discussing the gaps where learners have left gaps. Find out why are those gaps there and guide them. Then you can also ask them quick quizzes based on the notes that they have written to see whether they're able now to understand and use whatever they have written down. Then the presentation tasks, explain, are they able to explain these notes in their own words, not just reproducing what they have written. What are some of the challenges that may come up? Some learners may be copying text verbatim. Teach them to paraphrase and summarize. Like I've told you that when they are picking notes from the white spaces of the learners' books, it shouldn't just be about copying and pasting. There should be the aspect of paraphrasing and summarizing. Teach them not to write each and everything as they see it. You teach them on paraphrasing and summarizing. Then some learners, they fail to engage. Engage them through think, pair, sharing techniques. Let them share with your colleagues. Then some learners may find that the notes are very disorganized. You provide a clear template of how you want them to organize the notes that they have written. And I have given you my own template that I always give to my learners, guiding them on how to write the notes. So if they have a template, then they will not be able to give you some disorganized notes. So as I conclude, what are the takeaways? So we are saying that notes should always be learner generated and not teacher given. You should always encourage discussions rather than giving handouts. Then always assess their notes regularly. It is very important. So I think we've now come to the end of my presentation. Now, the floor is yours. The floor is open for questions and also any feedback given. But I want to first start from what we have in the chat. There is a chat which I lost, I think, when I logged out. Okay. Someone is saying that, will you kindly share with me the slides after presentation? Okay, I think the slides will be shared. Okay, teacher Bossa is following. Okay. There is a question here that, are we required to give learning outcomes and keywords? Then how do you present the learning outcomes? Thanks for your beautiful guidance. Okay, now, are we required to give learning outcomes and keywords? Now, whatever you are giving to learners, it has to be justified. You have to engage learners in discussions. Why do I want you to write this? And why do I want to write it the way I want you to write it? Now, the learning outcomes are very important because they're the ones that guide a learner on what to research, or these learners who want to read ahead. So when you introduce the topic, the first thing to do, you give them the learning outcomes. The learning outcomes must be there. They have to write them. For those purposes, that for reference, even for self-evaluation, when you say that we have finished the topic, our learner is able to go back and access the learning outcomes and actually see if those learning outcomes have been achieved. I personally, I don't see any relevance in rating the keywords. As for me, I don't see the relevance of rating the keywords. But nevertheless, if you feel that they need to rate also the keywords, then you can also structure in where they have to rate the keywords in your notes. But yes, learning outcomes are very crucial for purposes of self-evaluation. And after rating the heading, then the next thing should now be to rating learners' outcomes before they go to the other areas. Okay. Then another question. This is saying, however, there comes a case where the learner's books are very few compared to the learners and limited access to the internet. How can one handle this? Of course, ideally, these learners, they need very little information from the internet. You find that most of the information that they want these learners to pick from the internet is also in the textbooks. So if you're going to teach maybe a particular section, of course, you first read through. You ask yourself, which kind of information will my learners need? Then when you read through, you see, maybe they will need to know this and that. Then is there any textbook that has such information where I will ask my learners to go and open and pick responses from? If it is not there, and for you able to access that information from the internet, then you as the teacher, you'll now get that information. If maybe you can print it out, or if you can't print it, then you'll be forced to first dictate and you make them write down that information as part of the introduction. So you'll first give them that information. Why? Because you have known that that information is very important. They are going to require it when responding to the activities that you have given them. So you become their source of information at that moment. If you know that the only information where they can access things is the internet, and it is the whole school is only you with a smartphone, the learners don't have the smartphones. So get that information for them, go, dictate it for them, let them write it down. Then after writing it down, then now go back to the learner's book, they rate the activities, and then use that information they have given them to respond to the activities. Then also, Alex is also asking another question. So he's also having a question that learners' books are very few. As long as a group can access 2 books, then the books are enough. And I'm sure the government supplied fairly a good number, a good copies of books in all schools in the country. So even if learners can, if 10 learners can have access to 10 books, then they are enough. After all, they are just transferring information from those learners' books into their exercise. But also, where teachers have maybe computers, and you know that maybe a school has a projector, but the books are very few, then you're going now to type those activities. You type them, you display for them on a projector for learners to pick and rate. So kids, I hope I have answered you. What to do where there is only one learner's book or none at all? Kiza Hillary, I'm not sure whether there is any book without a learner's, sorry, any school without a learner's book. If they are not there, then the school admin needs to act. Otherwise, we are assuming that these books were distributed for free of charge in all schools, private and government. But nevertheless, if this one is happening, maybe the school has just started up, then you have now to get a copy. You can use your own salary. You get a copy of the book. Then whenever you go to class, you write for them that information on the chalkboard. You copy the information as it is in the learner's books, you write for them on the chalkboard, including the activities. Then the learners copy those activities from the chalkboard. Then they develop their responses from what you have written on the chalkboard. So if there is no learner's book, then you're going to access a copy of the learner's book and you write those activities on the blackboard. Then sometimes when given learners, they end up copying notes in it instead of discussing. Yes, learners are copying notes from the learners' books. It's what we are talking about. They have to do that. Let them copy. Because remember, your first session, the first hours in the class, they are copying notes, not from you, but from the learners' books. Then after copying these notes, then they now rate the activity that follows in the learner's book. Then the activities, the tasks in the activities to now provoke the discussion. And that is what you're talking about. The lesson should be discussion-based. What is not practical is you only giving them notes without them having access to the activities that can invoke discussions in class. Then Richard is saying we have a big challenge of inadequacies of learners' brains compared to learners. Yes, if the of course, it is a very big problem. Most schools don't have, but if you the few that you can access, you make good use of them. The few that you can access, you make good use of them. Or if you can access only one copy for the teacher, then that is enough. Then always go to those learners, write that information on the blackboard. Let learners copy those activities from the blackboard. For instance, let me broadcast now. These are my notes templates that I was making. So the way I have written them here, if I didn't have enough books, then I'll write the way I have written them here on the blackboard. Then learners just copy this from the blackboard and put them in their exercise books. Then now they start now discussing the responses. They start discussing the responses. You can do that. Or maybe still if they don't have other textbooks where they're going now to make like this kind of research from, like maybe drawing of the male reproductive system, there is no textbook. Then now there, that is when they reach here, you can draw for them this structure on that. For you, you'll draw these female reproductive systems randomly on the blackboard. You draw them there. Then you give the parts, sorry, the functions of the parts. You're not going to task learners to discuss in their groups the functions of the parts. They don't know them. They have never studied these things. And you've not given them textbooks. Of course, it is not you to blame. The school doesn't have textbooks from where they can make this research from. So for you, when they reach here, you can now put this information randomly on the blackboard. Then now you task them to use the information that you have written on the blackboard to respond to the tasks. You don't give them that now these are the notes. You give them the notes on the blackboard, these things randomly on the blackboard. Then you task them to use that information to respond to the tasks that you have given them. So you can do it like that. Then of course is saying, but basing that method is very good and enjoyable, but some of the challenges with the time always tend to be less and at the end affect syllabus coverage because you find an activity can take the whole period of about 80 minutes. Yes, these are also some of the challenges that arise, syllabus coverage. Now, sometimes we are always worried of syllabus coverage because we don't plan. Or if, of course, and not all activities, they should always do them from the class during your lesson. They shouldn't. For instance, let me display this. Okay. So I'm assuming, this is let me assume this is the history. And the history, in my first lesson, learners wrote the heading, then they wrote this, so the chapter, and then they wrote the heading, World War I, then they have written the learning outcomes. Now, in my lesson, if all of this is taken up, and by the time the bell goes, learners are just finishing discussing this activity 3.1. Now, I will not just send them out of the class like that. I will tell them that now, in the next lesson, come when you have written these notes. Reasons why East Africa was involved in World War I. So you task them to come when they have written this, and also you task them to come when they have done this activity, activity 3.2. Then it means that now in your next lesson, they will now again, you not again spend time waiting for them to transfer this into their exercise books. You will not do that. you'll straight away go to their presentations. And when they're presenting, again, not that the whole class must present. You can just pick a representative, 1 or 2 groups, that they can now give you points that you can now base on to help them understand how things are supposed to be done. So that is what you do. So you realize that now in that lesson, you will find that this activity, because they had made research already, it may take you about 40 minutes. Then you give them another one. If it does not, if time is not enough, then you now postpone it to another lesson. So you keep it continuous and flowing. That is why some, of course, we know also of some challenges in schools of too many exams that end up eating into the time of syllabus coverage. And then when they reach senior 4, they put in pressure, you must finish the syllabus, and you feel like you have to go back to the old system. Yes, you can go back to the old system, but you will not be helping the learners. Learners have to interact with these textbooks. Learners have to interact with the learners' books, read information, rephrase it. That's when they understand things better. Then a friend is saying, is it a must that at the end of the chapter, the exact AOI should be given? Don't you think some activities are substandard and can be changed? Okay, now I'll start with the first one. Is it a must that the AOI should be given? No. Design another AOI basing on your own interest. These activities of integration are always targeting specific skills. And these skills should be preparing them for end of cycle assessment. So you can redesign your own activities of integration, focusing on the skills that you feel your learners have not yet achieved, so that you can help them develop those skills. Or you can pick that activity of AOI as it is, and you improve it, you rephrase it to fit your own interest. Then don't you think that some activities are substandard and can be changed? Now, if you as a teacher, you open a book and you actually see the activity is substandard. Of course, I don't know what you'll base on to think that it is substandard. Of course, with my interaction with some teachers, they feel that an activity which doesn't have a lot of notes is substandard. But nevertheless, if you check that the activity is substandard, then that you can check in another textbook or in another learner's book and see if there is an activity you can borrow from there. Or you can still improve that substandard activity to fit your standard measures. So you get that activity, you improve it if it is substandard. Then someone is saying these learners have different understanding and will write different notes. When do these learners take harmonized notes from the teacher? Now, that is where we get it wrong. Learners don't have to take harmonized notes from the teacher. The question is, whatever they have written down, do they understand it? Do they understand it? If, for instance, they had written, okay, let me display this. So I'm going to base on this activity here. So learners have made this research from the textbook. First of all, I have been moving around the class, making sure that every learner is doing what I expect them to be doing. If I see a learner who is not serious, I will have already identified that this learner is not serious. And where is he not serious? Is it about a poor drawing? Is he skipping some tasks? What is it that is making this learner seem to be unserious? Then I'll be able to help that learner at individual level by moving around to make sure that they write what I want them to write and how I want it to write. Then in their groups, for example, if I look at this task number 3, why are the testis mammals found below the abdominal cavity? Now this one may call for different, learners will explain it in different ways. So I will sample whatever they have written. If it is wrong, then let them cross it out when I'm harmonizing and fix there what is correct. It is their notes, they are not your notes. in that even when they are revising, they will know that, oh, on this task, I had written something wrong, but this is how it was corrected. Then they're saying that another question, I think every school needs a projector. Yes, ideally, under ideal circumstances, ICT is very, very important. ICT is very, very important. Schools need projectors. But nevertheless, where projectors aren't, then you shouldn't complain and say, they don't have a projector, let me go the old way. As I say, you can still improvise. Now, your blackboard can be the projector. Your blackboard can be the projector. Or even your phone. If maybe they are saying, listen, like maybe for example, the other example I gave you of English, learners have to listen to a radio talk show. You can bring your smartphone. You play it for them in class, then they listen. You have to be creative. You have to be creative. Yes, we know resources are not enough, but we have to be creative as teachers. Emmanuel is saying, but the time and sometimes books, these learners' books are not enough to accommodate all learners in some schools and for some subjects. Of course, these learners cannot accommodate all, so the books are not enough for all learners. That's why they study in groups. Just make sure that whichever groups you have, at least every group has a learner's book. If they are still few, then I'm afraid you're going to rate those activities on the blackboard, and learners have to copy them from the blackboard. John is saying the issue of learners copying stuff, just as it can be dealt with by probing questions. This makes them think of what they have written. I prefer that these probes are scenario-based. If you can read the scenarios that best relate to the condition within the class, better. Yes, Mobiru. First of all, you're saying the issue of learners copying stuff, just as it is, can be dealt with by probing questions. Remember, the stuff you're saying learners are copying activities into their learners' books that they are doing. Then, as they copy these activities, then they will discuss the responses in their groups. Now, for you, the teacher, you'll now come in with probing questions, scenario-based probing questions, to assess whether learners have understood the things that they have written down. That is what we mean. For instance, look at this. Let me go to, okay, let me use history. History, learners wrote about World War I, and they copied these tasks in the learners' books, and also the notes. There are some notes they also copied from the learners' books. Let them copy, it is okay. From the they are learning the basics of making research and also rephrasing or paraphrasing. Then after they have written these tasks or activities as tasks in their exercise books, now in the responses here, now you are not going to go through each, interpreting each and every point that they have written. But for you now focus on asking probing questions to see if they have understood what they have written. For instance, let me go back to body that I understand better. So learners have researched about the functions of the female parts. So the parts of the female reproductive system. So they have researched, they have given them textbooks, they have copied them and they have written them down. Now, I want to find out. Now, I'm going to ask probing questions to see, do these learners understand the things that they have written? I will now ask them. Now, parents who suffer, or mothers, pregnant mothers who suffer miscarriages, which part of their reproductive system could be having a problem? Now, a learner should go and look at, during pregnancy, what is the role of each part of the reproductive system? They'll find out that maybe the uterus is the one that holds the fetus. Then the cervix allows passage of the uterus during delivery. Now, a learner should be able now to say that, oh, wait a minute. So if a mother suffers from a miscarriage, it means that it is the uterus which has a problem. Now, But that is what we mean by probing questions. You ask something which is real life scenario based, like that one when I say that if a mother suffers from miscarriage, that is a real life context. That is a scenario. Now, a learner will now go and read through whatever they have written and find out what could be the problem. Then if they find out, oh, the function of the uterus is to hold the baby. And now the teacher is saying, if a mother suffers from miscarriage, what could be the problem? Then the learner should now be able to tell you that, no, it is the uterus which could be having the problem. That is what we mean by probing questions. Some of our learners in the villages don't want to engage in discussions, but rather need the notes. If you encourage to write their notes, they report to the admins, how are we to handle this? Wambale, I hope you've not come late. We've been talking about how do you guide learners to write down something. And also there is also another wrong perception. What are notes? When you mention of the word notes, what are notes? In the old curriculum, notes were the handouts. In the old curriculum, notes were the handouts. But in the new curriculum, notes are what has a learner written down at the end of the lesson. Those are what we call the notes. What has a learner written down at the end of the lesson? And if my learner has written this one that I'm displaying, these are notes. These are the notes that a learner has written. These are the ones we mean by notes. Notes are not the handouts that you have. Those handouts, those are reference materials. Notes are what has a learner written down during class. And I've been guiding teachers on how they can guide learners. I'm sure that even if admin opens the learner's book and they find these things here, definitely they will be convinced that these are the notes. Wambale Salvera, I hope I have answered you. You are not going to encourage learners to write their notes, but you are going to tell learners what to write, when to write it, and how to write it. That is what you're going to do to the learners. Give them the learners' books and guide them on how they can extract information from there and write it down. You are not to stand in front of them and start dictating, and then you say that now these are the notes. Then somebody is saying almost no learner's book contains all the activities required to meet all the learning outcomes in the syllabus. What can be done in this case? Samuel, it is not true that learners' books don't have all activities required to meet all the learning outcomes. The books that were approved by government, they were approved basing on meeting these demands. They went through under vigorous reviewing to see, do they meet the demands of the syllabus? Unless if you get a book that was not approved by Ministry of Education, then indeed those books will not have all the required activities to meet all the learning outcomes. But if you get a book recommended by government, it has everything that you need. Okay, Mr. Ding saying, is it possible for learners to have different notes since they might use different resources to carry out research? Well, it is very possible for learners to have, of course, I don't want now to call them notes. I will call them responses. The notes must be the same. And why am I saying that the notes must be the same? Because they are all copying them from the same learner's book. So, and also they are all responding to the same activity. So the notes must be the same and the activities must be the same, but it is the responses that can differ because they are going to make research from different sources. Okay, then for information that is somewhat missing in the previous existing books, I have personally, okay, I'm reading someone's response. They're saying, Obiri is saying that I have personally used the videos to teach with this. You need to pre-watch the video. If it has some ratings, I recommend that you be clear on what you need them to note from the video and do some assessment after it. To me, this has also been good in case where learners' books are few. Now the question is, if you are going to teach using a video, of course, there are some activities that need video clips. Now, when do you introduce a video clip? A video clip? When do you introduce a video clip? It is my template lesson I showed you for English. Let me first display the thing for English. This is an extract from English. So I'm assuming that if I was going to teach this lesson here, I must first of all have seen what do I need. And the activity is clear. They're saying you'll watch a recorded television discussion presented to you by your teacher in your group. So it means I'm going to go to class with a recorded television discussion. So I must go with it. I must have a projector. I must have a computer. I must have electricity for me to be able to give this to conduct this lesson here. But now, learners must first rate the notes. Let them first rate this. After rating, let them also rate the activity as it is. Then after the activity, now learners will have known that it means that for me to respond to this activity, I must first listen to a video clip. Now, after they have written everything, now this is when you now play for them with the video clip. Now they will watch it well aware of what they need to extract from that video clip. But you don't just play them the video clip, then after playing it, then you say, okay, now you rate the activity. You have to be creative in how you present which information after which information. Okay. Then we are actually having a very big challenge with learners' attitude towards sourcing and making their notes. This one is saying that they are having a big challenge with the learners' attitude towards sourcing and making their notes amidst limited resources like textbooks and internet connections. Help us on how to address learners' attitude that notes only come from teachers. Of course, if the learner has an attitude that notes come from teachers, then it means you, the teacher, you have not yet guided them on how to do things. If you guide them on how to do things, then they will not say that teachers have to, sorry, notes have to come from teachers. You guide them. Remember the statement I used. I said learners have to be told what to rate, when to rate it, and how to rate it. That is my advice to you. Tell them, rate this, and rate it now. And this is how I want you to rate it. So that is what you ought to do. Get the learners' books, tell them, rate that. Then have you finished? Now rate the activity. But I need my activity in this format, rate it. Then discuss the responses. All that they are rating in their books. And those are the notes that we are talking about. Notes are not just content. The perception or the mindset that we have, we think that notes are supposed to be the content. Notes is not the content. Notes is what learners have written in their exercise books. That is what we call notes. So please, if learners still have the wrong attitude that notes come from you, it means it is you who has not yet guided them on what to do. Robert is saying that in a school where learners' books are few, of course, where learners' books are few, these learners have to work in groups. Learners have to work in groups. But nevertheless, if they are still very few, then you have to write for them information in the learner's books on the blackboard, and they copy it from the blackboard. Then Ochung is saying that for her, she has resorted to generating her own activities by following the learning outcomes and make sure that they provide the learners with the learning outcomes. Villa Ochung, yes, it is correct for you to develop your own learning activities. That is, if you have the resources and you have the expertise, you can look at the learners' learning outcomes and develop the learning activities. But however, I wouldn't encourage you to keep doing that. Make use of the books that the government supplied. There is something that you may not be able to, because all activities in those government supplied books were reviewed. Now, the question is, who is going to review your activity to tell you that maybe it is good or it is not good? Maybe if you can sit down as a department, you develop your activities as peers, then you review them, you agree, then you take them to the learners. That is the best thing to do. But where you don't have anyone to review your activities, then please, you can follow those ones in the government provided textbooks. Or if you still see that something is missing, then you can improve them. This one's asking that, does race still hold meaning in biology? Race, that is scoring using race. Now, race is for activities of integration. And yes, race still holds. Sorry, there's a lot of noise, but it's about to end. Then teacher Hilda is saying, videos have helped us a lot. However, we must be sensitive on which kind of videos, because some of them have information which is overdose for the learners. Yes, if some videos have overdose for the learners, remember, before even you display a video, you have watched it, and you have proved that actually, indeed, it contains the information that you need. So if you have seen that it has the information that you need, then it means it is good. By the time you play it to the class, it means you have watched it. Okay. Obang Jasper is asking, what are the contents on introducing a new theme or topic? Now, the contents on introducing a new theme or topic, still, you see what is given in the learner's books. Let me use this example here. So in this one, this is now the introduction. I hope people can see my cursor moving. This is now the introduction. This one here, this is the introduction. So it means after this heading, this is the introduction. Then let them read, summarize, or paraphrase this introduction here. Then if I go to maybe say biology, the introduction, this introduction here, after they have written by heading that sexual reproduction in humans, then I will ask them to read through this introduction and see if there is anything that they can pick from it. If it is there, then let them write it down. That would be the introduction. Then okay, Obang is again asking, if we don't harmonize together, what if a learner makes mistakes in the course of making notes? How shall we correct these errors? Now, that is why that when they have given their responses and you are now they have presented their responses to the members or to the rest of the class. Now, as they present, you take note of each and every response that they give. Even if it is a wrong response, you take note of all those responses. Then after, you now start guiding them through explaining each and every response that they have generated. Even if there is a wrong one, you now tell them, why this point? Group number 2, you elaborate. Where is this point coming from? Then what do the rest of the members say? Then you realize that now all of them will agree that actually that point does not stand. Then if they all agree that the point does not stand, then you can now tell them to cross it out from their notes. Then Job is saying, let us know which level we are talking about. We are talking about O level. We're talking about O level because I've been using learners books and we don't have learners books for A level. Somebody is saying almost no learners books contains all activities required. I think we have answered this one here. Okay. Then lastly, Fred is saying, but there are situations where you guide learners on what to do, but they don't do. What can you do in such a situation? Please, I don't think that there is a learner who can refuse to do what you're telling them to do if you know what you're telling them to do. There is no learner that can refuse. I have given you a textbook, learner's book, and I've told you, copy and write that in your exercise books. Now, as they are copying, I'm moving around the class. I'm moving around the class to see who is not doing what I want them to do. So if I find there is one who is not writing, then I'll have to find out, why are you not writing? And I'll have now to force them to write. Of course, they may have different excuses, but you move around, you find out who is not doing what you want them to do and why are they not doing, why are they not doing it? Okay. Then does race still hold the sense in biology? Please, I have said that yes, race still holds the sense when scoring activities of integration. Race still holds. Then Felix is saying, learners sometimes prefer to write after the teacher's harmonization to avoid crossing in their books. How can that be addressed? We learn through mistakes. Let them write. Let them write. Then when you are going through, then now they should be able to know, I had written this and it is wrong, I'm crossing it out, and now I'm adding there what is correct. Who do not have to be having mistakes, and these mistakes have been corrected. Even when they are making their own revision, they should also be able to be reminded of their own mistakes. That, oh, this one I crossed out, I had thought like this and that, but the teacher ended up clarifying, and this is what I ended up writing. So please, don't allow learners to write after harmonization. They have to write. And also in the discussion, you have to make sure that everyone is writing. Let them write it down. It is through writing that they get to comprehend the things. I think that was the last question. Obang is just thanking the facilitator. So I think I have responded to all that was in the inbox. So if there is any verbal question, then it can come through. If you have any question, you can activate the symbol for the hand, then we'll unmute you and you'll be able to air out your supplement or maybe your question. Okay. So if there is any question, please, you can unmute yourself and you ask it. But otherwise, I think I have exhaustively responded to all questions that were in the chat.
Thank you so much, Teacher Arthur. Mr. Matthias wanted to share something on math.
That would be very interesting.
Okay. Okay.
As is preparing to share, let me also respond to this one who is saying that what do you do to learners? Someone is saying that what do you do to classes which have very many learners? Of course, if the ratio of the books does not match with the number of learners in class, then I'm afraid you'll have to rate those activities on the blackboard or on the chalkboard. So you have to make use of the learners' books. And as a teacher, you have to be very creative. If the class is big, you have to find out means of what to do. But sending handouts is not an option. Okay, over to you, Matthias.
Good evening, good afternoon, everybody.
Good afternoon to you.
I'm happy to be here with you in this session. We want to thank Arthur for making effort to show where you are in the competency-based curriculum. I would first beg Kaziba to first put the sharing first away, and I show what we want to show. I'm opening the video. I don't know if people can see me. Are you able to see me?
Yes.
That is a real life object talking about rows and columns. How many rows do we have?
Only that it is not directing the camera.
How many rows do we have?
Still, we're not able to see everything. We're just seeing some few bottles of soda.
Now, can you see it? Can we see how many they are?
They are 3.
How many are those?
The rows are 3.
3 and 4. I have another one, a tray of eggs. How many rows does a tray of eggs contain? How many rows?
6. As if I'm seeing 6.
6, and then the columns.
Are there 5?
5. Then I have a pack of medicine. A pack of medicine. How many rows and how many columns?
5 and 2.
5 and 2. So, one of the most important things, as now you can share the pictures from the slides. So what we are saying, the topic is matrices. And teaching and learning, the math teacher must have understood the learning outcome. When you get the learning outcome, you look for the concept and how it works in real life. The concept in the learning outcome must be understood by the teacher. That's the first role of the teacher. Understand the learning outcome. Then find out how does it work in real life. I've given you 3 examples of how matrices work in real life. But from your classroom, you will also find that matrices are there because we have rows and columns. So as we prepare to teach and learn in the new curriculum or in the competence-based curriculum, I beg you, understand the learning outcome concept. Then find out how does it work in real life, because you have to start from the known. Then you go to the unknown. The second part is the picture which Kaziba is sharing here. That one, when you have seen the concrete experience, then you go to the representation experience. This can be a drawing or a picture or a video clip. And when it comes to a video clip, some people are saying, oh, videos, you have, yes, you have, the first task for you is to watch this video yourself, interact with the video. Then collaborate with your ICT teacher. There are very many apps now available. One of them is called Brave. There are very many apps the ICT teachers know. So work with them and they crop out the information you want for a video to run for you. And it will run for 1 or 2 minutes only is enough for your concept to be displayed or to be seen by the learners. If it goes to more than 5 minutes, then you are going outside the teaching principles. A video for classroom should not be more than 6 minutes. So that is key, but a concept will always be displayed in 2 minutes or 3 at maximum. The concept will be there. And your role is to ask them, what captured your attention? Why? And then you go on. This is another example of matrices at work in real life. We can go on, then we can go next, Kaziba. I've shown already the trays of eggs. We can go on. Now, what is happening here? I want one hand to tell us what is happening here. Somebody should tell us from the audience. Robert Lanek, tell us what is happening. Unmute and tell us, Robert Lanek. Tell us. People are doing what?
People are playing football.
Correct. That is very good. Then to the Merero.
I'm like, people are playing football and someone has fallen down.
Great. When the games are over, what do we do? When the playing has ended, what do we get as the results? What do we get as the result?
It can be a win, a draw, or a loss.
So that is very great. So Kaziba, show the next chart. So when teams play, the results are recorded in matrices. So we are developing the concept from what the children know, but here we are still under representation of the concept matrices using diagrams and PowerPoint slides, videos, charts. There you are still showing the concept. You start from the known. I started with a game, then Liverpool is there. It won a certain number of games, it did draw, it lost. And then when we have how each point is rewarded, 23 times 3, then the draws 7 times 1, the obvious losses 2 times 0. Then we are there and we can get the total point for the game, which is the last column. It is very clear. The learners now here will know that when you look at the row multiplied by the column, you get the total points. And that is what matrices are all about. In real life, they are being used. And every day the newspapers in our school are displaying these things for matrices. We can add on, I'm requesting for, yes, the next one is here, this class I've talked about the coatum. All of these things, the children are interacting with them. And I want to ask that we need another session on note taking. Thank you very much. We can stop there, Kaziva, we switch off that. Over to the moderator. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Mulumba, Matthias. I hope our math friends have taken a note and also have been enlightened more on how the teaching can be done. Actually, I did not even, when I was preparing my session, I did not even bother picking anything from the math because I know math, the notes in math have different meanings. There are different ways how you do them. That's why I even didn't want to venture into how teachers can guide learners to make notes in math. And indeed, I think through Mr. Kaziba, we shall see if we can organize another session focusing on now other subjects that are more technical, how learners can be guided to write down that. But at least for math, I think learners will always write down something because math is more practical, unlike ours, which tend to be very theoretical. So any question, colleagues, either to me or to Mr. Mulumba, can either unmute or you can let it pass through the chat. Someone is asking that race, someone is commenting about race. So members, let us understand the rationale of using race and the meaning of the race itself when we are scoring these activities of integration. When you design a task, so a scenario, and then you put a task, you're going to assess your learners whether a learner is relevant, whether a learner's response is relevant, whether it is accurate, and whether it is coherent. Now, those skills combined will help a learner be able to respond to the end of cycle items that people are so much obsessed with. And the end of cycle is now a combination of all those of all those skills, of all those areas, irrespective of the scores. If we say that you're going to score out of 10 activity of integration, does it mean that also the end of cycle should also be scored out of 10? The end of cycle, if I give a learner a scenario, for instance, I've given a learner a scenario that maybe, let me try to use maybe mathematics, that someone has been given maybe tablets and is going to, they're saying that he must first take medicine from row 1 until he finishes that row before he goes to the second row. Then maybe you're going to advise on maybe something like that. Now, when a learner is responding, in the responses, first of all, a learner has to be spot on. By spot on, I mean, has he interpreted the scenario correctly? Now, the spot on is the other skill in activity of integration we are calling the relevancy. Is your response relevant? Then, is it accurate? Then now, how are you going now to explain your response? Now, the explanation is now where we capture the skill of the coherency, the coherence in your point. So for us, we shall look at the entire point, and then we say, okay, this is correct or wrong. In the end of cycle, but for you at school level, you are training this learner, first of all, to be relevant in how they interpret their scenarios. You're training them to be accurate in the responses that they give, and then you're training them to be coherent. the flow of the content or the flow of the words that they're using when they're explaining there or when they are responding to given tasks. So combined, that is what we now look out for in the end of cycle. The end of cycle is not scored according to race, but the race in activity of integration helps a learner to build onto the skills that he will use to respond to end of cycle exams. So please still use the race when you are assessing these activities of integration. Leave how end of cycle is assessed. The end of cycle assessment, you cannot even adopt and use it at school level. It is relevant. It is not, does not apply. It is not applicable. Remember, we are assessing competencies. We are not assessing content. Always take note of that. When I give a learner the definition of osmosis, in end of cycle, I'm not going to ask this learner to define for me osmosis. No, I will just set something different. Then this learner should now use that knowledge of osmosis to give me, to explain a phenomenon or to give me a response based on what I would have asked. So race is still relevant, and please use it for activities of integration. End of cycle, that one you leave it for your name. You leave it for your name. Even sometimes when it becomes hard, how should we score end of term exams? Score them the way you want. As long as you know that at the end of the day, learners are getting skills that will enable them to respond to those real life situations that will appear in end of cycle exams. Someone is saying that in the future, use examples from subjects like CRE. Mr. Mulumba has a science background, so he may not be able to, but of course we can. We can. Okay, any other question? If it is not there, over to you, Stephen.
Thank you so much, Mr. Arthur and Mr. Matthias. We want to thank you so much for taking time to come and share with us the good practices on how we can guide our learners. Thank you so much. We want also to thank the teachers that have joined this session. Thank you so much. I know we are going to have very many other sessions in the weeks to come, and we shall be letting you know through the WhatsApp group. We are going to be letting you know we shall have other sessions such that we can continue supporting you to be able to deliver the competence-based curriculum. All what we are doing here can as well apply when it comes to the A-level curriculum. Yes, Mr. Matthias.
Okay, somebody wanted to do, I can do, Sarah, it is very easy if it is the topic of worship. If I came with a song about the Easter, and the children, we are singing about Easter with the children. The children now, I will ask them, where is this one done? It is concrete. They have experience, concrete experience of worship. If it is a Muslim example, I ask them, let us get water and clean our hands and clean our legs. Then we go where the mats are. I'm in a concrete experience of worship. And then I can bring a representation of that concept worship. After the third part of it is now to ask them to go and read in the learner's book. But when they have done it, they have either, we have sung the song about Jesus or a song about Muhammad, and everybody is participating, is dancing, and is happy. Then I ask them, where is this one done? They would tell me either a mosque or a church. And then from there, what would they be doing? They will say they are worshiping God. I continue probing them, as Arthur has put. Your role as a teacher is to create a concrete experience of the concept. Bring it to the class and the learners become engaged. After the engagement, pose as many questions as the world can allow using the Socratic questioning technique or the 6 magic W's. You can ask the what, the why, the how, the where, the when, the which. You ask as many questions as possible, such that the concept is broken down into simple things that are manageable for the learners. Your role for you, because you are an expert, you need to identify how does this concept work in real life. Worship works by people going to church, singing the songs about the Bible or the Quran, and then other forms, you can bring them. Then I can bring a picture of people going to the mosque, like when we had Eid Day, if you had taken the picture at Old Kampala. Now, this Easter, the CRE teachers should take pictures of how people are going to the church and how the mass will be run by the priests. You have those pictures, upload them on a computer if you have, or if you can't do that, ask a fine art teacher to draw for you those drawings of people going to the church or the mosque. Then use those charts to introduce the concept. Then you have questions about the chart. As many as 120 questions on those charts, if you have the time. Ask all those questions. Then the learners, you will be listing there what they know. You are starting from the known and then taking them to the unknown. That is the principle of competency-based learning. You start from the known. It should be learner-centered, such that we hear the learner's choice and voice. It should be having sustained inquiry. Many questions being posed. So those three put together, we shall be co-creating. And when we co-create, the learners will benefit more. And as we shall do another session on note taking, because we need to scaffold this one, make it better than what we have received today. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Matthias. We have started on the journey. We shall have as many sessions as possible to ensure that we really support you to deliver the curriculum very, very well. We want to thank our facilitator, Mr. Arthur. Thank you so much for the preparations. Thank you so much for taking. And members who have been asking for the slides, you'll be able to receive them. And we shall continue to guide you throughout the process until when we have this curriculum well understood and that our learners in this curriculum are better than the other. Allow me to call Mr. Ronald to say something and then to find a close of the session. Mr. Ronald, you are welcome.
Mr. Kaziba, can you hear me?
Mr. Ronald, you are clear.
Thank you, Mr. Arthur Kugonza. Thank you, Matthias Mulumba. Thank you, Mr. Kaziba and your team for allowing us to learn this afternoon. I have been noting this is also feedback for us at the ministry about what is happening in the various schools. All the questions that were raised in the chat give us feedback, and that is very important for us to know the challenges that you are facing in your schools. So this gives me chance when we are in meetings to probably also raise some of these things, and we will progress slowly. We'll progress slowly. Rome was not built in one day. We will get there. We note that we really need many more sessions, and it is up to us as teachers to give ourselves the time to accept and tune in, join in whenever we are invited, so that we can participate and learn together. I noted that I think we also need a similar session for the head teachers. I think if we do not go out to the head teachers and they also experience what is required so that they can think about the budgets, they can think about the support they need to give the teachers, to talk about the learners' attitude at assembly, to support the teachers to change from the old way of doing things to the new way of doing things, I think we will be failing ourselves. So One of the sessions we must plan for, I think, should be a session for the head teachers too, so that they understand what is the new way of teaching, introducing the lesson, and how do we help the students to write notes. I must say it's been an insightful session, and I want to thank all the presenters for the time they've given to this. I want to thank all of you for the questions you've raised in the chat. And I know that many more people are going to listen in to this recording so that we reach many other people. I pray that we meet again soon so that we can add to this discussion. I want to thank all of you and wish all of us a happy and joyful Easter season. And also those who are already on holiday, we wish you a great holiday. And I hope within the holiday time, we shall find some time to come back and learn together. With that, I want to declare this session closed. Thank you.